Welcome to the Wolverine Digest Podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
I just want to start by saying go blue.
All right. Actually watched Dazed and Confused last night. That's hilarious that just came out of me right there. A little McConaughey shout out there.
Hands up. Hands up.
Here we are on a Monday night, Chris, after an absolute bender of a weekend. Dude, I mean, we didn't do a show on Friday because we were cruising and locked in, just trying to.
Wait, we didn't do a Friday show?
We did not. We did not do a Friday show because we were on the road, man, trying to road dogging it, just trying to get there, and turned into a pretty late night. And then obviously covered the game, did a post game show. That was all good. Michigan won Nebraska 45-7, and then it was pedal to the ground time, dude. You drove.
Yeah,
I was just passenger princess for the weekend, but dude. What a freaking grind. And we're not spring chickens anymore. That's one thing I've realized, Chris.
I was going to say, I know we're going to talk about the football game and all the things that we learned from Michigan, but I just feel like we have to spend a little bit of time on this. I mean, 11 hours was basically what it was on. So we left on Friday. We drove the 11 hours. We stayed at the Lion's Den for anybody who's in Gretna.
The Red Lion. Thank you very much.
What's the Lion's Den? Is that like an adult store?
That's what it felt like in there, in that hotel. It felt like the Lion's Den.
The Red Lion. I'm sorry, in beautiful Gretna, Nebraska. You should check that place out. It's phenomenal. But drove 11 hours, stayed in Gretna. Woke up early Saturday morning, drove to the game, covered the game. Game gets out about 6:30-ish. Brandon and I stopped for a bite on the way out, and then it's 11 hours straight back through the night into the late hours of the evening, early morning. And then we roll into Ann Arbor at about
7?
Yeah, right around 7 a.m. So, yeah, I mean, and then after that the morning we got back, I slept for like 2 or 3 hours, got up, and then drove another hour to go to my son's soccer game, sit there like a dead body, drive an hour back, come back. So it's been, we were talking about this a little bit before we went live, but man, you're right. We're not spring chickens. We're both pushing 40 and 22 hours in a car. Really takes a lot. I feel like I was on a bender. Like I went drinking all weekend.
Yeah.
Like that's really what it feels like. It's a hangover.
Did not have a drop of alcohol to speak of for the whole weekend and feel just wiped out.
Yeah.
Wiped. But Hassler.
The meat pocket.
We did have a runza. Both of us had a runza. Chris actually had dos runzas. He just had to have another one.
For the record here, I do want for those that don't know, I think we might have talked about it on the show before, but I don't eat on game days. Like no matter what time the game starts, like I don't eat before the game. It's just kind of a thing that I do. I want to work on an empty stomach. I don't want to feel heavy. I don't want to feel like I got something in my stomach. So,
and it was 95 out this weekend, so even more.
Yeah, so it was mid 90s down there, probably closer to 100 on the field. Didn't eat, woke up Saturday, didn't eat the entire day. And by the time we actually got to Runza's, which was somewhere near Omaha or unfortunately, it was in Iowa by the time we hit a Runza, like right on the border. We were trying to make it part of our Nebraska stop. Didn't work. But anyway, we get there. I don't know what time it was, almost 8 o'clock. And yeah, so I went back for another Runza. Like I had one, it was pretty good. I've never had it quite a sandwich like that. It was pretty good and had to go back for number 2 and paid the price a little bit.
Chris is justified. Look, this is what Chris and I both have a tendency to do this. Chris is justifying it any way he wants. He had 2 runses. All right.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the.
Well, I mean, that was my only meal of the day. That's justifiable. 2 sandwiches.
I mean, I had 13 diesels, dude. I mean, I had to stay hydrated, dude. I had to stay hydrated.
I don't know how. Yeah, we have so much to talk about from this trip.
I really don't think we do.
Listen, it's amazing how much you can learn about a man when you spend 22 hours in a car with him. Brandon and I were in close proximity. We've been working together now for, almost 3 years. And I learned a lot on this trip. I learned a lot. I'm a little concerned about a few things that might actually show up here in one of our favorite segments on a Monday.
Oh boy. Well, hey, I'd be lying if I said I didn't. If I said that I wasn't pretty sure it was coming. I thought we had some discussions
about it. We had some discussions. We talked about it.
All right, let's get into some football. Then we'll get to that segment that we all love so much. Yep. We'll close it out with burning questions. Have a couple other things mixed in the middle there. So here we go. Michigan cruises. We talked about this on Saturday. Their most dominant performance, the most complete game that they had played. Almost pitched a shutout for the first time in Memorial Stadium in 70 years. If it wasn't for the 74-yard touchdown scamper at the end, that's exactly what would have happened. But Michigan rolls 45-7. Could have been a lot worse than that. None of us gave Michigan enough credit in this one based on what we had seen really through the first 4 weeks. Michigan kind of taking their foot off the pedal, giving up a score or two here late, not being able to score once the second and third unit came in, and they kind of did all that stuff. So it resulted in a 45-7 win. Chris, you thought 34-13. I thought 31-10. Trent thought 34-10. So we were all in that same 21, 24-point victory range. Michigan wins by 38, covers easily, gets into the 40s for the first time this year. Again, we did this on Saturday, but just rethinking back now how complete of a game that was from these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think for anybody who watched it, obviously the biggest curiosity going into it is what would Michigan look like in their first road contest, and everybody knew that Nebraska wasn't in the national championship hunt, but again, can be a tough environment. We've seen Michigan struggle with Nebraska on the road, particularly. I think it was back in 2021. It was like a 3 or 4 point game from what I remember. So we've seen that the Cornhuskers can make things difficult on Michigan, but yeah, man, it was. From start to finish, it was about as complete and as impressive. And there was one prominent college football analyst that put it in a way that we'll talk about later in the show that I really think captures what this Michigan football team is. We watch the way they play, and you've described it as like, a sumo wrestler sort of leaning on someone until they just give up and fall over. And you're kind of looking for now look, when it comes to big explosive plays, what Roman Wilson did on that touchdown catch, you're going to be hard pressed to see a better touchdown reception for the remainder of the college football season. So kudos to him. But by and large, the way Michigan operates is slow and methodical, and they take care of their business on the field. And then by the time the game's over, you look up on the scoreboard and it's another dominant win for Michigan, this time on the road. It's in Big Ten play. So I mean, you usually do your 3 up, 3 down. There was nothing down. I mean, there was really nothing to be upset about. The only thing you could really be, even slightly upset about was they gave up the shutout, which would have been the first in that building for Nebraska since 1933. I mean, I think that was right. The 30s was the last time they were shut out.
No.
Or was it the
68?
68, 1968. So, yeah, I mean, they gave up the shutout late, which was a bummer to see. But outside of that, I mean, just on both sides of the ball, complete domination. There was never any point in that game where you thought Michigan was in jeopardy of losing.
No, not even close. Dominant from start to finish. Really imposing their will, especially the offensive line and the running game. I mean, it got to be the point where, I'm looking – every time it was 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 or 3rd and 2, it was just like handoff, boom, 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 3, 4. I mean, that's so demoralizing for a defense to everybody knew it was coming. The Michigan doesn't try to get cute or try to get tricky in those situations. And Nebraska had no answer for him. And Jim Harbaugh mentioned it today at the press conference. Like, that was by far the biggest defensive line they had played against. and Michigan's offensive line looked the best it has looked so far. So I think that's a step in the right direction. We'll get into that. It's one of my burning questions. We'll talk about the specifics of that O-line a little bit. But Chris, going back to my predictions that we made, I ended up going 4 for 5. I don't really know if these were layups necessarily, but looking back on the game and looking at what I said, I'm like, that was almost like a no-brainer. So anyway, number one, pretty hilarious. Chris, I actually didn't catch it. You told me that he did it. I thought he was serving up the corn to the linemen, but I said that Blake Corum will once again do the eating the corn cob celebration, and you confirmed for me that he did do that.
I'm pretty sure he took a nibble or two before passing it off and doing what, the celebration with the teammates. But yeah, I mean, you had a little parlay going there, and we needed to see Blake Corum get in the end zone. So that was great to see. And yeah, I mean, the corn celebration, I think JJ did it really first. Take the baton there for sure.
Yeah, and then the line. What I saw was Blake doing either like salt and pepper or something,
a little seasoning on it.
Yes, on the cobs for the linemen, which I would say still counts. I mean, like that's part of the corn cob celebration. But
listen,
basically, what I was saying was that he was going to score a touchdown again. It's almost an automatic at this point. Like when Blake Corum doesn't score a touchdown, it's like, what's wrong? Like what happened? How did he not get in there? So that's pretty much what that one was leading to. I feel like I cut you off something.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know. We just saw a lot of corn.
Oh, man, dude. We talked about that on Saturday, too. Like endless cornfields in Iowa and thousands of windmills off in the distance in the dark that makes you feel like you're on another planet almost. It was wild.
I have never, ever in my life on that drive through Iowa seen as much field and grain and whatever the hell else was planted out there. As far as the eye could see, it was like it was just a highway. Like you imagine driving through like parts of the Middle East and it's just desert all around you and it's like a desolate road. Like that's what Iowa is, except it's cornfields. And in a lot of ways it's really pretty, but in a lot of ways it was I don't know, man. I just, the size of these fields out there. It's no wonder when you're driving through. I've never heard a combine commercial in my life. I heard several commercials for seeds. No, you are in a different world when you're out there in Iowa, Nebraska. CJ knows. He lives out there. He's in the sticks. He gets it.
And to answer CJ's question real quick, we did not stop at exit 19, and I feel like it was a missed opportunity. We kind of saw it like last second as we're, by that point we're 6-7 hours into the trip. We're just cruising, and we saw it. I was like, oh, I think that was it right there, and then we saw mile marker 19. So yeah, it was.
When you're in the midst of we were just 11 hours, 22 hours within just over 24 hours, you'd like to stop and see the sights. The only thing we really stopped and got a really good sense of, Brandon, was the world's largest truck stop. The world's largest truck stop. We made a stop there. We were impressed by what we saw. That was it. Is that in Iowa or was that in Nebraska?
Iowa.
That was Iowa.
That was Iowa. Oh yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, the largest truck stop in the world, and I can confirm I was there. It was massive. It's a little city in and of itself. Brandon and I went in there, and just an incredible place. I mean, if you're ever in the middle of nowhere in Iowa and you find yourself face to face with an opportunity to stop at the world's largest truck stop, you take that opportunity.
I thought Chris might come out with a hoodie. He was really eyeing a hoodie.
I was about to drop $30 on a hoodie there, and I just, I couldn't bring myself to do it. But incredible place.
All right, number 2, Colston Loveland will score a touchdown. I feel like I'm trying to will these dudes into the end zone. Colston Loveland and Donovan Edwards. Every week I've said one of them is going to score, and every week I've been wrong. So it's another part of my burning question I'm going to get to. But like Colston Loveland still no scores on the season. Chris, 5 games in.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a surprise. And again, it goes back to a lot of the stuff we heard in the preseason about how good he was, how elite he was. You know, he's making all these incredible plays during fall camp. And, you get into the season and it just it sets the expectation for what you might see out of him. And it's been, I find myself with a lot of these things, and even the same with what's kind of been going on with Donovan Edwards, how it hasn't really looked the way we thought it might look, is that there's still room for so much improvement, and Michigan has played so well through 5 weeks that I don't know whether I should be concerned or feel even more optimistic that 2 of these massive weapons are largely untapped. We haven't really seen, what we're accustomed to or what we would expect to see. So I take it more as like, yeah, it's a little bit puzzling, but it gives me a lot of confidence moving forward because those big performances are coming. They have to.
They're just too good. I mean,
Like
that's
Jim
what
Harbaugh said, law of averages. It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
It's what we've said about Donovan Edwards the whole season. He's just too good to have stat lines like that and not find the end zone. So yeah, puzzling again I decided not to predict Blake this week. I went with Loveland, was wrong again, and Donovan, and Donovan also didn't score again. So yeah, still strange 5 weeks into the season. These next two are, kind of a testament to how dominant Michigan was, and I think how skewed the numbers were for Nebraska a little bit. We talked about it leading up to the game. They were like number 1 or number 2 in the country in rushing offense and number 6 in rushing defense, or maybe it was the other way around. Whatever. Both of them were like top 5, top 6 rushing offense and rushing defense. I said that Michigan will easily rush for more yards against Nebraska than anyone else they had played. Well, through 4 games, Chris, their biggest total that they had given up was 58 yards. Michigan had 249 on Saturday. So that was as lopsided as it possibly gets. And then on the flip side, I said that Michigan will hold Nebraska to the least amount of rushing yards than anybody else this year. To that point, it was 181. Michigan held them to 106. So not even close in both areas. Michigan was dominant, really kind of swung the pendulum back to where it probably closer to where it should be for a Nebraska team, still figuring some stuff out. But again, speaks to the dominance and the physicality of Michigan on both sides.
Yeah, and I think Matt Rule said that post-game that, Michigan had a clear-cut plan that they were going to come in and run the football and impose their will, and that's exactly what they did. And, he views the Wolverines as a blueprint for how he wants to build his football team. And when you watch these guys play from week to week, it's weird because for so long, Michigan wasn't there, even during the early part of the Harbaugh era, and to have them, be looked upon as like, to hear a player around the Big Ten say, we prepare like we're playing for Michigan every week. And to hear another coach say, that's the blueprint for how we want to build a football team. It's just incredible how far this program has come under Jim Harbaugh. And it's exciting to watch. It's exciting to cover it. It's a good place to be if you're a fan. And yeah, they did what they wanted to do on Saturday. It was clear who was in control of that game from start to finish. Beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean that that first number, especially the highest run total against Nebraska, which that's impressive. Whoever you play, the highest run total that they had given up was 58 yards. Like that's getting it done on defense. Like I said, even if you're playing, and they were 2-2, so they had 2 losses in there and still had only given up 58 yards rushing. Michigan comes in and goes for 249. I mean, it wasn't even close. So yeah, that was a pretty impressive outing for the Michigan offensive line and backs. Kalal Mullings looked good. JJ McCarthy, another good day running the ball. And of course, Blake Corum found the end zone yet again. And last but not least, Chris, I said that Michigan will finally cover the spread, and they did by just a little bit. It was 17 to 18.5, somewhere in that range. 17.5, 18.5. Michigan won by 38. So, absolutely blew the doors off the spread this week, and for the first time also eclipsed 40 points. So there you go. That's a pretty good look.
Not a bad little weekend out there in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Not a bad little weekend. All right, I'm going to just for a moment, I don't want to send Chris's audio into a tailspin with over there, but we got to have it at least to introduce to at least introduce the segment that we all love.
This guy.
Chris, I see you through your phone and I don't like it.
I'm not pulling any photographic evidence. Don't worry, Brandon. I'm not going to do you dirty like you did me. Although you did.
No,
you did ask for permission. You did ask for permission.
That was consensual.
Yeah, it was consensual.
It was completely consensual. All right, so there's the segment. I'll go first, Chris, because I think I know where you're going to go. And it'll be fun to close out the segment with that. I'm going to go, and everybody's saying it. It's Urban Meyer. I mean, dude, for pregame to talk about how Nebraska has this formula, and he leaned on the rushing offense and the rushing defense, and obviously he couldn't have been more wrong. And he thought that that Nebraska would really give Michigan a game and that they would even upset the Wolverines. Michigan needed to be on upset watch. He was praising Matt Rule. He was doing this. He was doing that. Dude, that was not even a game from Jump Street. Like, that thing was over in a hurry. The boneyard, if you will, the student section there at Nebraska at Memorial Stadium was damn near empty by midway through the second quarter. Tons and tons of people headed for the exits very, very early in that one. I ended up, I don't even think I told you this, Chris. You were down on the field already. I was riding up in an elevator with a Nebraska fan, and I just, there's a bunch of people on there. It's taking a while. Doors open, doors closed. I'm like, so how do you see it today? Normally I don't do the talk to the guy on the elevator thing, but the lady that was pressing the buttons was like, okay, we're going to floors 3, 6, 9. And the guy next to me goes, damn, Chef. Like he rapped the Yin Yang Twins song. And I'm like, all right, this guy's cut from the same cloth. So I leaned over to him. I asked him how he thought Nebraska was going to do. And he said, oh, we're going to get killed today. So it was like, some people certainly knew that they just weren't a match for Michigan. Urban Meyer, who makes a lot of money to talk on TV, apparently, I don't know, like that was just such a weird take. I mean, we all know he doesn't like Michigan. That's fine. But you still have to find some level of objectivity when you're doing that job. And that was as far off as you could have possibly been when it comes to pregame analysis. Just looked like you want to talk about looking like a dink, Chris. That was
putting the ass in analysis. Yeah, that works. We'll go with it.
Just a dink, dude. It sounded like an idiot. I don't remember how the other people I think Brady Quinn might have even been like, well, I don't really see it that way, like almost immediately. Yeah. And it just. I think
Urban Meyer's just trying to speak it into existence because he can't. I don't know that he can even stomach another repeat of the last 2 years, particularly because Big Noon Kickoff was on hand for pretty much every Michigan dominant win. He had to sit there and
he had to watch it a lot.
Watched Urban Meyer kiss J.J. McCarthy on the cheek, pretty much eat his earlobe during the last Big Ten championship game. I got a really good photo of that. So, yeah, I'm sure he's been struggling after the last 2 years. But, that's, some of these guys, I mean, Urban Meyer's a Buckeye. He can't help but have a little bit of – we see it with Desmond Howard on College Game Day all the time. We absolutely love him for it. And I think Urban's just trying to – steer the universe in a certain direction, but the Wolverines were having none of it on Saturday. Before we do move on, I do want to acknowledge Chris Fields on YouTube submitted a super chat that we missed before we got into the segment. Loveland is not Andro Anthony, boys. It isn't deja vu. I, for the first time in a long time, fully believe everyone will eat this season. And I think Brandon and I agree. We're on the same page. It's a little puzzling, that we haven't seen it yet, but I do agree. To me, when it comes to Colston Loveland and when it comes to, even Donovan Edwards, it's inevitable. It's surprising you haven't seen it through 5 weeks, but I think with both of those guys, it's inevitable that you're going to see them make big time plays down the stretch. Because quite frankly, I think Michigan's going to need it, as you get into the latter part of that schedule. Throwing Maryland in there, you've got at Penn State, you've got at Maryland, and then you're back home against Ohio State. You're going to need your playmakers to make big time plays, and Colston Loveland and Donovan Edwards certainly fit into that mold. So
no hard feelings there, Chris. I apologize. I had the starred comment pulled up.
Brandon screwed it. It's okay. It's okay. He screwed it up. It's fine. It's fine. It happens.
We haven't been getting enough. If you guys would like to
we're not used to it, to be honest, Chris. We're really not used to it. There's a reason Rosie's not out on the road this year.
No. I did see somebody ask that too. Is Rosie done for good? She's not. She's not done for good. We have some home game plans for her, and maybe at least one potential road game as well. So no, she's not done. She's a little bit sidelined right now, working through some things, but that's about it. That's about it. She's not retired just yet. All right, Chris, the floor is yours. The floor is yours.
I mean, I really struggle with this one, Brandon, because I was going through a list of things that I wanted to really single out from our trip. And there was a part of me that was like, okay, do I go with the solo karaoke days and nights in the house? No, I don't do that. Do I go with the survivalist Brandon? The guy who thinks he would thrive in a zombie apocalypse. I'm not going to go there. Mm-hmm. I think the sticking point for me out of everything we talked about that I just find the most egregious, the most offensive, the most unforgivable is really the word it comes to. We were driving in the car, and we, obviously we're listening to Pandora. We got the music playing, and somehow or another it comes. Brandon, for those of you who don't know, Brandon Brown is a massive Nickelback.
No, you don't need to use that adjective.
He might be running a fan page somewhere that I'm unaware of under a burner account. Big time Nickelback fan. Fair to say? Big time.
I'll take big time. Massive is a bit much.
Well, okay, if there's not a huge gap between massive and big,
I think
if you got a big time performance on the field and a massive performance on the field, those are pretty close performance. Either way, big fan of the band Nickelback. And the Smashing Pumpkins came on, and we were listening to them. And Brandon goes, first of all, not a fan of the Pumpkins, which fine, okay, doesn't really resonate with anybody. But then goes on to say that Nickelback basically runs laps around the Smashing Pumpkins, and my head explodes. And Brandon is very defensive of Nickelback. He comes to their, he wants to defend them. He was looking up the numbers and how many albums sold. And I told Brandon flat out, I said, we're taking this to the show because right now I'm offended. I don't know, I don't know that our relationship will ever be the same after this. We need to take it to the people. He thought you folks out there in the comments would come to his defense, basically point out that Nickelback is just a good, solid band. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And so for that reason, and based on what I'm seeing in the comments here, Brandon, you might be on an island out there. You might be on Nickelback Island.
This is like
just you and Chad Kroger out there.
This is like what I always say. If you go to a restaurant and you read the Yelp reviews, all you're going to see are the loudmouths who want to be heard, and the negatives. This country and this society,
the country
thrives in the negative. Thrives, Chris.
Here we go. It's the country's fault now.
We see it on articles. We see it on Billy Corgan is better than Chad Kroger at what? Sounding like a pansy? I will agree. Sounds like he's crying all day. He needs a hug. Someone go hug Billy Corgan, please. Listen, if you go to Yelp, the only things you see are the negative comments, which is what we're seeing right now. It's the people who want a dog.
Look at this photograph.
Now, listen, I did say that that's one of the worst ones in their catalog. Okay, it's bad.
And it happens to be their most popular.
No, it's not their most popular.
Come on. What are we doing here? Look, we got a couple Nickelback scragglers in here, but I don't know, man. I think by and large,
they've sold double the albums that Smashing Pumpkins has sold in less time, I may add. Sure, I'm sure someone will have an excuse and some explanation for that. But look, this is just like with Michigan, right? Michigan's got the most wins ever, and Michigan fans love to spout that thing off. And people will come out and say, well, but 300 of the wins came before the forward pass and before integration and before this.
You guys,
you can't hear it? You can't have both sides of the coin.
You hear the way he's defending? You hear the way he's defending Nickelback right now? The passion behind it?
Numbers are numbers, okay? double the album sales, okay?
And this is what I dealt with. This is what I dealt with in the vehicle.
Saw them in concert in July. Fire. The show was phenomenal. It was an incredible show. I was singing my lungs out the whole time.
I told Brandon, and I stand by this, I would rather get a colonoscopy than go to a free Nickelback. I'm getting to the age where I need one anyway, so I think it would be a productive use of my time. I swear on my children, I would do that before I would go to a Nickelback concert for free. That's just where I'm at with it.
That's insanity.
I don't think so. But for that reason, Brandon, and you guys could hear it, he's a big time, massive fan. He didn't like the word massive, but strong defense of the band Nickelback there.
Fletch.
And for that reason, Brandon is my TFG of the week.
Fletch, there's no guilty pleasure. They're legit. I don't need to put my windows up and hide when I listen.
That's the thing. If he had said they were a guilty pleasure, then maybe I could accept it. A guilty pleasure. We all have those bands, those songs out there that are guilty pleasure. He doesn't view them that way. Brandon views Nickelback the way a lot of people view the Beatles. It's like it's strange.
No,
It's unacceptable.
For the record, I don't really like the Beatles, but that's a little bit of a stretch. I wouldn't put those words in my own mouth, so I don't think you should do it either. That's Alex Orgy's the best kick returner on the planet level hyperbole right there.
Not quite. What I just said was a little closer to the truth.
Let's pump the brakes just a little bit on that. But listen, here's the deal. Jeff Weimer brings up a couple of good points. Look, I know all the reasons in the music world why Nickelback is not wildly respected. Billy Corgan might be better at singing, at writing lyrics.
Oh, you had it singing as well, yes.
Singing, absolutely not. His voice is it's the same reason I don't like Mr. Brightside.
This is how you remind me.
It's so wimpy and horrible sounding that I can't do it.
It's a style. It's unique. It's rock and roll Hall of Fame-esque.
It's a shitty one.
No.
It can be a style. Jinko jeans also a style.
Listen, we've got two egregious trains of thought here. A, the love of Nickelback, and B, the flat out hatred of the Smashing Pumpkins. That's like red flag. You know, we're in uncharted waters here.
I can't even do it. I can't even do his voice. It's too whiny. I don't even have that range. And I've got range, brother. Chris, you know it. You know it.
Your neighbor knows it. That's for sure.
I'm surprised you didn't mention the tie-dye or the Black Forces even. You didn't even get into that.
There were so many things that I was going to go into. Since you brought it up, I will say it. As Brandon shows up, as we're about to embark on our road trip to Nebraska, no less, Brandon shows up in a tie-dye shirt and black Air Force Ones.
Correct. Very comfortable.
That's all I'm going to say. A tie-dye shirt, black Air Force Ones.
Very comfortable road attire. Very comfortable road attire. No, I didn't wear the chains. Chris said if I had the chains on, it might have been a discussion.
He was about to wear necklaces and pearl necklaces and feather necklaces with black Air Forces. I mean, it was almost something that you go into like Spirit of Halloween and you pick it out. You know what I mean? Like we're venturing on that territory here. So Brandon, like I said, there were a lot of things that I was going to bring up that I could have brought up, but to me, the Nickelback thing, I mean, I just couldn't get over it. Incredible song.
I just can't do it, dude. I would smack that guy if I saw him. I would smack him.
It's so offensive to hear you talk that way.
His name's Billy, dude.
Correct. It's a phenomenal name for the.
What adult man goes by Billy?
I don't know. You're in defense of a man named Chad. No offense to any Chads out there, but come on now.
Yeah, let's see who offends more people with that. Me offending adult man named Billy, or you?
Woo, Chad.
Chads. Damn, Billy Corgan's kind of big. I thought he was a little pipsqueak. He's the homeboy 6'3". I better pipe it down a little bit. Anyway,
when it comes to Billy Corgan.
Anyway, yeah, it was a funny discussion, the back and forth for Nickelback. The Pumpkins.
As you can see from the amount of time we've taken, sorry about that, Chad Zolman. It's just not a rock and roll name as far as for me. That's all it is. Chad isn't a bad name. If there's any Billies in here, I'm coming to your defense as well. Chad is not a bad name. It's not a rock and roll name.
There will be no Billies in here unless they're 10 or under, so we're good. That's part of the point I was making. Thank you.
Yeah, but obviously we spent quite a bit of time on this topic on our 11-hour road trip, and for that reason, Brandon was my TFG of the week.
Excellent.
Look at this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh.
Yeah, Billie Jean's a girl, so slightly different example there, Rob. Anyway,
here we go. Billy, look at this. Billy, we have an adult Billy in the comment section, and you've managed to offend him. Congratulations, Brandon. You are on a heater tonight. Apologies, Chad.
That's not his real name. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about that.
Every time I do it makes me laugh.
Okay, I've conceded that Photograph is a lame song, okay? I understand. You can't say what the hell is on Joey's head in a lyric.
What is that on Joey's head?
Terrible. I understand, okay?
Brandon just in the crowd, teary-eyed.
Every band out there has a song that blows. We also talked about that. They all have a couple stinkers. When you've been selling 50 million albums for 2 decades, you're bound to have one bad one. Okay? That's all I'll say. All right. Let's get back to football. Because
do we still have anybody watching this show?
We actually have more than when we started, which is pretty funny. We're 35 minutes in, and I don't know. I'm
35 minutes in, and we just spent 25 minutes on Nickelback.
I'm going to go in my room and listen to Nickelback's greatest hits, which is so long. I don't even know if I can fit in before I go to bed. And then I'll listen to the one good song by Smashing Pumpkins and call it a night. All right, here we go. Pro Football Focus quickly, Chris. I mean, it's probably not a surprise who's number 1 and number 2 on offense. I was a little surprised by who was number 1 and number 2 on defense. Would you like to venture a guess for number 1 and number 2 highest graded players for Michigan on offense in this one?
I would go J.J. McCarthy and Khalil Mullings.
You would be very well. You know what? Khalil Mullings did have an off-the-chart score, but he only played 8 snaps, and I do a 15-snap minimum, so that you're not wrong.
Okay, all right,
you're not wrong. He just didn't play enough. J.J. McCarthy was number 2. Number 1. That's your boy.
Offensive lineman.
That's your
Roman
boy.
Wilson.
Roman Wilson, dude. The catches, the 2 catches by Roman.
Okay, all right. I just thought that would be too easy.
Well, yeah. Roman Wilson 1. J.J. McCarthy 2. A.J. Barner, number 3, had a good game, caught a couple first downs, has been solid as a blocker once again, played more snaps than Colston Loveland, I think only by 1 this week, but had a good game for himself. And Chris, I'm going to ask you to take a couple guesses because I was pretty surprised, not because I didn't think they didn't play well, but I don't know if I would have went there off rip. So for the defensive side of the ball, do you have any guess for 1 through 3? 3 names that I don't think we've talked about before on this list.
Josiah Stewart.
That would have been a good one to guess, but he did not make the top 3.
He did not. Okay. I mean, Kenneth Grant, Junior Colson's usually a safe bet. That would have been my 3.
So number 1 with the highest score of anybody, 91.6, Derek Moore. Derek Moore with the highest graded score per Pro Football Focus. Mike Barrett came in at number 2 at 88.1. And Braden McGregor, who has slowly but surely been getting better and better each week. He had the tipped pass that led to the interception by Kenneth Grant. I think he might have also – did he get a sack on Saturday?
He did get a sack, and it was impressive. He treated that offensive tackle like he was a child. If you go back,
so he's been playing better and better each week, and I mean, dude, you named a few other guys who I may have guessed as well. I know Kenneth Grant would have popped in my head because of the pick, and he's been pushing the pocket.
Wasn't Josiah Stewart Big Ten?
2 sacks. Yeah. So those would have been the 2 that I may have guessed, but again, there's a lot more that goes into it. Block shedding is part of it, making tackles when you're supposed to, not missing tackles, being in the correct zone. I mean, there's a lot of things. It's not. It's not just about, Josiah Stewart had 2 sacks. He may have also missed 2 tackles. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but like that's kind of how that gets factored in a little bit. So pretty cool to see some new names up there, including one, Braden McGregor, who I know you and I are both really pulling for. I mean, just, you go back to his recruitment and local kid. And I know we talk about the drip, dude, and just how he looks out there on the field. And he's really starting to play with a lot of confidence. He actually spoke today at the press conference and talked about that. Like, things feel like they're slowing down. Like, I feel like I can do whatever I want. There's, coming off a big knee injury is tough for a lot of athletes. And he's talking like a guy who doesn't even think about it anymore. And he's starting to play like it too. So pretty cool to see some of those names up there. Mike Barrett, Derek Moore, Braden McGregor on defense, Roman Wilson, J.J. McCarthy, and A.J. Barner on the offensive side of the ball. All right. 20 minutes to try to finish out these burning cues, Chris. Do you think we can do it? Do you think we can't do it? Not in 20 minutes.
Not if we start talking about Nickelback again. It's one of my brain questions. I'm kidding.
Well, I got all the answers when it comes to my Canadian brothers. All right. You want to
north of the border?
North of the border. You want to start us off? Or you want me to get it going?
Let me start us off here, Brandon.
All right.
We touched on him a little bit here during the show. Roman Wilson, again, just another incredible performance. 2 touchdowns on Saturday. His pace actually right now of 1.6 touchdowns per game would be enough to break Desmond Howards' single season touchdown record of 19 during the regular season. Roman Wilson is on pace to break Howard's single season record in 1991. Oh, by the way, the year he won the Heisman Trophy. So I'm just going to put it to you like this. We've seen him now through 5 weeks. It doesn't look like a flash in the pan. It looks like Roman Wilson is legit. He's made, like I said, what's arguably the top catch of the year. It's going to be hard to find somebody who can pull in something tougher than that. Does Roman Wilson set the new single season record for touchdown? Now, keep in mind, you've got a Big Ten championship game. You've got a potential playoff run. Does Roman Wilson get it done?
Man.
And here's more perspective. Roman Wilson's got 8 through 5 weeks. The last Michigan wide receiver that had 8 touchdown receptions in a single season, Donovan Peoples-Jones in 2018. So Roman Wilson has already tied that, and we're not even halfway through the season.
I've got to say no. That number, it just sounds insane. But he's cooking, dude. I mean, we're approaching the midway point of the season, and that's not flash in the pan territory anymore. He has shown that he can get open. He catches everything. He's faster than everybody. He's quicker than everybody. He's stronger than he looks. He can turn short gains into long ones. I mean, dude, if he's 3 inches taller, he's a top 5 draft pick.
Yeah.
That's going to be the one knock on him, is that he's not very big. That's it. There is nothing else about Roman Wilson that you wouldn't create in a laboratory when it comes to playing the wide receiver position. He's also tough as hell and willing to block downfield and a great teammate by all accounts. I mean, like, he checks every single box except for he's probably 5'10", 5'11". He's just not that big. But that number's just crazy, dude. I mean, when we started the season out and you look at, what Michigan's wide receivers have or have not done, I guess, up until this point, that number just looked like it was never going to be touched, at least not while Jim Harbaugh was in town. And now, if you just double his production, he'll be at 16 touchdowns with 2 regular season games to go.
Yeah.
I don't know if he can keep
up the biggest regular season games to go.
I don't know if he can keep up that pace, but it sure looks like he can. I'm still going to say no because it's just such a crazy number. But why? I guess I'd argue with my own self and say, like, why can't he?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to say no, but it's insane that we're talking about it right now because it just didn't seem like it was ever going to happen with this offense.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say it just based on what we've seen so far and how important he is to the passing offense. We do believe that J.J. McCarthy is going to break the single season passing touchdown record, and Roman Wilson is going to be a huge part of that. And for further context or comparison, through 5 weeks during that 1991 season, Desmond Howard had 10 touchdown receptions, Roman Wilson at 8 through the first 5 weeks. So again, they're not that far off. Roman Wilson has the luxury of probably playing a few more games under his belt. Desmond Howard did it in 12 games during 91, including the bowl game. I think the Wolverines are going to get more than, I know they're going to get more than 12 this year, regardless of what happens. He's so critical to what Michigan does offensively. He's too fast, too strong. He's got too much athleticism. To see him not continue to at least average what he's done through the first 5 weeks of the season, I think would be more of a surprise if he doesn't pass it than if he does. That's the kind of pace he's on right now. And again, it's not like it's been all easy, all simplified thing. I mean, he is making plays. He's a playmaker. That's what he does. And I think we're going to continue to see it through the remainder of the season. I don't think we've seen his best game as a Wolverine yet. They've got some big-time matchups coming up in the latter part of the season. He's going to have to be a big part of it if they get the W. Roman Wilson is going to set the single-season touchdown record as a wide receiver, and that's something that, for as good as I thought he was going to be this year, I didn't have that on my bingo card either, but it sure looks like, I mean, he's on pace to do it, and I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I see some people throwing out, short wide receiver names. Yeah, there are some. I'm not saying you can't play the position at that height. I'm saying, you mentioned Tyreek Hill, not a high draft pick. I saw somebody else mention Julian Edelman, not a high draft. I mean, they just don't get drafted that high. They don't, on the scale of.
That was your overall point, right? He's a top five pick if he's got the extra inches. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, dude, I would take him on my NFL team 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, even though he's going to be extremely productive, he's going to test well because he's fast, he's strong, he's put together. It's just the nature of that position. Roman Wilson is having a much better season than Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's never going to be talked about like him.
How about this for? Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr.'s got 3 touchdown receptions on the season. How about this? Roman Wilson's 8 touchdowns are double the next closest in the Big Ten. I think it's a guy for Purdue and maybe somebody for Indiana. They've got 4 touchdowns each. I mean, he's doubling up the next closest guy in the Big Ten. That's how good of a season he's having. I just think people. I know locally they love Roman Wilson, but I don't know that nationally Roman Wilson's getting the love he deserves, and I think that's going to change pretty quick.
I was actually going to say that because Jim Harbaugh mentioned today, because I think somebody asked about Colston Loveland, and I think he only have 1 catch on Saturday, and he hasn't scored like we've talked about.
Sure.
And Harbaugh said he's getting double teamed. Teams are very aware of the damage that he could do in the middle of the field, and they're trying to take him away. I'm wondering when you're going to start seeing that with Roman. You're going to have to start bracketing, dude. You're going to have to put a guy over the top and dedicate 2 defenders to him, or he's going to burn you for 2 touchdowns a game. That's what he's done almost every week. And so, yeah, it's pretty impressive what he's doing. I would expect at some point teams start to make a game plan revolving around him, and then, damn, now you do that. Now you've got 1 less guy in the box. Here comes Blake Corum. Here comes Donovan Edwards. Here comes J.J. McCarthy out the back door on a keeper. I mean, pick your poison, man. Take your pick and try to live with it. And that's why I think Michigan still does have several levels to get to when it comes to this offense. It's
20-piece coming for number 1. A 20-piece.
That would be the way to rock the number 1 jersey to about 20 touchdowns.
He's certainly doing it justice.
Yes. All right, Chris, sticking on the offensive side of the ball, but looking at that O-line, Miles Hinton was in full uniform and went through warmups, but he did not play on Saturday. Instead, they shifted Carson Barnhart back over to right tackle, which is where he played last year when they won the Joe Moore Award, and they brought out Ladarius Henderson in at left tackle, and that was the best that this running game has looked all season. I don't think anybody would debate that. Is that your new starting offensive line moving forward, regardless of Miles Hinton's health?
Yeah, I would say unless something changes in game where it's starting not to work, but it looked pretty damn good on Saturday. And I think Sharon Moore said it in a press conference a couple of weeks ago, is that they're evaluating. They've got so many guys that can play on that offensive line that they're evaluating it week to week, game by game. And based on what we saw against Nebraska, I see zero reason to change it against Minnesota. So I think you keep riding that until you see a reason to shuffle it around. And man, what a luxury for Michigan to have that, where if things aren't working well, at right tackle, left guard, whatever it is, you have pieces that you can move and put in place because they're just so deep at those positions.
Yeah. Braden McGregor talked about today how on the defensive line they have what's called the rally group. You get 4 in, 4 out, 4. It's like you go as hard as you can for 4 plays, and then you look over there and you've got the rally group coming in to take your spot, and they're going to go hard for 4 plays, and that's just how they do it. Jim Harbaugh said that they may start implementing that a little bit along the offensive line because they just have so many guys who can play, and you can keep dudes fresh. I wouldn't expect the core 3 to move. You got Keegan Zinner and Drake Nugent. I think that group's staying in there. But when you've had some ups and downs at the tackle spot, and now Miles Hinton is apparently working through something a little bit, you've got multiple guys who can do it out there. How about Jeff Percy's apparently playing guard now too? Started at left tackle last year when Ryan Hayes was out, and now he was in the game at right guard late down the stretch. You've got Andrew Gentry, who Jim Harbaugh is always praising. That dude's big as hell. They are so big, dude. When you're down on the field, like Miles Hinton, I know he was out and he didn't play. Dude's enormous. And maybe he got pushed out of his spot, so be it. But I think so too. I mean, it looked like I said, I think Nebraska's rush defense was skewed a little bit of how good they were. But like I said, you play 4 games and the most rushing yards you give up is 58. I don't really care who you play. That means you got a decent run defense. And Michigan did whatever they wanted. So I think that's your new group moving forward.
All right, man, we're going to stick with offense a little bit. Everybody that watched the game on Saturday saw it, and we've seen it kind of now happen a few times this season. Khalil Mullings at running back. Look, I know he's, 3rd on the depth chart, but when he's in and when he gets an opportunity, he certainly makes the most of his opportunities. On Saturday, he had 43 yards and 1 touchdown on just 5 carries. And to compare that to Donovan Edwards, Edwards had 48 yards on 14 carries. Again, didn't find the end zone. So here's my question to you, Brandon. Is Khalil Mullings still going to be that 3rd option at running back as the season goes on? Or are you starting to see a scenario where this guy might work himself into that RB2 spot before the season's over?
I still think that Donovan Edwards is RB2, and I think it for a couple and I think he will. I think Khalil Mullings is exactly what he needs to be for this offense. He is your short yardage, power back, grind it down at the end when you want to get the other 2 guys out. And he looks like his legs are super fresh. He's 235. He's hard to tackle. He's got way more wiggle than I think a lot of people thought that he would. I mean, he's making guys miss in the hole, giving little head and shoulder fakes. I mean, he's got enough long speed. I think he's going to stay exactly where I don't know why you would change it. What he's doing is working very well. I know Donovan is still a little slow out of the gate, but he's still the best pass catching back on your roster. So he works well in those early downs and is certainly on 3rd down when you need to maybe have a back in there to pass pro. I think he's been billed as one of the better pass protectors because he's used to it. He's more of a receiver, and he's really good at flaring out and catching the ball out of the backfield. So I think you leave it exactly how it is, but it sure is nice to know that if Donovan just isn't getting it right, or, knock on wood, he does get a little banged up, Mullings can play RB2 and be just fine. And maybe even more production than you were getting out of Donovan, which seems crazy based on what we thought at the beginning of the season. But he has looked really good. I mean, like, to the point where you're like, damn, I kind of wish he was that running back a couple seasons ago instead of just recently moving over from defense, because it does look very natural for him. And he's a handful, man. That late in the 4th quarter, there's a reason why he's running for 6, 7, 8 yards a pop. Like, nobody wants to mess with that, late in the 4th quarter when you're down 30.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've talked about it a number of times. I think I even said it on this show. For Edwards, it feels more like it's inevitable that it's going to pop, that things are going to happen. He's going to find the end zone. But in terms of just earning reps, I find a hard reason to believe why Khalil Mullings should only have 5 carries next week. I mean, this is a guy that's proven every time he gets the ball in his hands, he's a hard runner. Like you said, he's got a little more shiftiness to him than he thought. He can obviously find the end zone when he gets out in open space. He can turn on the jets a little bit, and he is that power short yardage back where, if Michigan needs to keep a drive alive, you can rely on him. And so is he going to overtake Edwards as the number 2? I think the jury's still out on that. But what I would say is, based on what he's done so far, the patience he's had, switching positions, and how effective he's been in limited reps, I would love to see Khalil Mullings get more carries. I mean, bump it up to 10 carries on every Saturday. Give him the ball until he proves that he shouldn't have the ball anymore. That's how I feel about him. He has been by far and away my personal biggest positive surprise this year. Didn't expect much out of him at the running back position. It's been pretty impressive to see the way he carries the football and what type of impact he can have, again, in limited reps. So
yeah,
does he overtake that number 2 spot? No, but when Edwards is getting 14 carries and Mullings is having 5, I think, maybe there should be a discussion there about shifting that a little bit. You move Edwards out to the slot, you see what he can do there, and you give Mullings more run in the backfield.
So you've got 19 carries between the 2 of those guys. You say maybe more like 10 and 9, or
10 and
9 down the middle. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, again, let's see what he can do with more. I mean, we really haven't seen what Khalil Mullings is fully capable of, but in limited reps, he looks pretty damn good.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And most importantly, he's keeping drives alive. I mean, that counts for a whole hell of a lot. Like, if you're a running back, like, yeah, I'm sure it feels good to go out there and get the 1 yard that you need, but you also, I mean, you're keeping those drives going. You want to be on the field too. Make no mistake. Khalil Mullings, like, yeah, people might view him as like 3rd down short yardage, 4th down short yardage, but he views himself differently, I'm sure.
Yeah, Sharon Moore talked about that. He said the value and I forget what word he used. It wasn't like peace of mind, but it was like the value and just the feeling you get when you're in offense and you take the ball all the way down until the game is over. Like, you don't score, you don't kick a field goal, you don't punt it, you just move the ball until the game is over with. And he said Khalil Mullings was like the single biggest reason they were able to do that against Rutgers. It was just give it to 20, give it to 20, give it to 20. And he just kept going 6 yards, first down, 7 yards, first down. He carried it 6 times in a row, and they just let the clock run out and game over. I mean, as an OC and an O-line coach, you know he's loving that. You know the linemen are loving it. And Mullings is showing that he can absolutely carry the water. If Donovan does keep, I want to make that clear because
I see it in the comments. Nobody's advocating that Khalil Mullings should take over for Donovan Edwards. It's just we've seen now through 5 weeks what the numbers look like, and Khalil has been pretty impressive in limited reps. And I think really the question is, should we see Khalil Mullings get more of a run, more reps moving forward? And I certainly think he's proven that and earned that in the reps that he's had.
I just saw the Nickelback comment. Good. I didn't want to go that hard, but that's about how I feel. All right, Chris, again, this is something. This is something we've talked about a few times now because it's popped up in multiple games for Michigan this year, and this one would have had a lot more juice with it. The shutout, the defensive shutout. Had not happened on Nebraska's home field since 1968. We were talking about it up in the booth, and then all of a sudden, this track speed guy. That was that dude's first carry of the season, by the way. 74-yard touchdown right up the middle. A lot of speed. Nobody could catch him. And you've got backups and freshmen and some walk-ons in there. So, Chris, I just want you to talk about the phenomenon that is losing a shutout at the end of the game like that. Would you do it that way? How do you feel about it? What do you think Jesse Minter's? And I think we talked about this a little bit. I think you said that Minter brought up his philosophy on it. But the starters want the goose egg. Minter wants it. All the defensive coaches want it. And those young players out there don't want to be on the field being the ones giving it up. So what's your overall take on losing a shutout when really, like, they could have had it with ease if they wanted to?
To me, those are pretty points. Those are style points. At the end of the day, it's survive and advance and stay healthy. Yeah. And I think Michigan's doing exactly that. Like, if you shut out Nebraska last Saturday, but you lose in Happy Valley, or a player goes down and gets injured, or ultimately you don't win the Big Ten and you don't win a national championship, nobody's going to look back on the shutout against Nebraska and print T-shirts for that. So to me, that's the value is low. Yeah, you would love to see Michigan continue that and the young guys be able to finish it off. But at the end of the day, that's a learning experience for them. They obviously need to get better. Those are going to be the guys replacing the 20-something draft picks that Michigan could have in the upcoming draft. Those guys are getting valuable reps. Michigan's putting them in the spot where they can get those reps. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing, like I said, is you win, you advance, you stay healthy, and you live to fight the next week. And that's what Michigan's doing. So does it suck losing the shutout? Yeah, a little bit, but not as much as it feels good winning convincingly and keeping everybody healthy.
Yeah, I know it frustrates me up there watching. So the players are frustrated. The coaches are a little frustrated. I saw somebody say, though, it does get young guys, walk-ons, backups on the field in a game situation for film. I mean, they can go right to that play and say, why the hell did this happen? Cameron Calhoun, I think, might have been in the game at that point. Jair Hill, some of those really young corners, like, where were you supposed to be at? What angle did you take right here? Why does the defensive lineman might not have been gap sound? Like, why did that guy who carried it for the first time all season go through the line untouched and make it all the way to the end zone? So there is value in it. And I think that's what I believe, Chris, you said Jesse Minter explained it that way. Like, yeah, we just use it as a teachable moment. We'll look at it. We'll do this with it, whatever. But it sucks. I mean, especially in that situation, where it hadn't happened at Nebraska in 70 years, and Michigan might have been able to say that they did that. That would have been cool. But, yeah, grand scheme, probably better for the long run, but you really would have liked to see that goose egg up there when the clock hit 0, for sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mentioned this earlier in the show. I talked about how one analyst described Michigan, what I felt was perfectly. And look, this guy's been on my shit list as of late. One Mr. Joel Klatt, who's been just slurping everything coming out of Columbus lately. The Buckeyes had a bye week, so I think his focus shifted back to Michigan. And recently he described Michigan this way. He said he compared their brand of football to a boa constrictor. He said it's not explosive, it's not flashy, but it moves slowly and methodically. He said it's death eventually and inevitably, which I absolutely loved as a description of what this Michigan football team is. Given what you've seen the first 5 weeks, is this brand of football good enough as is to win a national championship?
Yeah. And it's partially because of Michigan, and it's partially because of the field. There isn't a Georgia team from 2 seasons ago. There isn't an LSU from the Joe Burrow season where he threw 1 billion touchdown passes. Everybody besides Michigan has struggled with a quote-unquote inferior opponent. Michigan has not been tested. I mean, they've won every game by a sizable amount. They have not given up double-digit points in any game. And really, if you look at all of their games, aside from the Rutgers game where they scored very early, it's been garbage points. That's all Michigan has given up.
Yeah.
And so the defense is traveling. The defense is good against all types of offenses. Everybody on that side of the ball is getting better and more healthy. I mean, I think Rod Moore played like 15 snaps or something. He didn't even play half the snaps this week. He's still getting better. Will Johnson still doesn't quite look 100%, even though he's playing a lot. Obviously, Mason Graham has been out for 2 weeks in a row now. He's one of the best interior defenders in the Big Ten. So, yes, absolutely, this team can beat anybody in the country, and this offense and this approach will win games. It took a while for you and I to come around to that idea, but it's the truth. And this was something I wanted to bring up maybe even before the season started or after a game. I don't remember who said it. I feel like it was a widely pretty accepted philosophy, and I just didn't understand it, and I don't agree with it. Basically, it was that Michigan is designed to beat Ohio State, but Ohio State is designed to beat the better. I just don't understand that. If you're good at football,
that's a coping mechanism.
Yes, if you're good, it's because of how they played Georgia in the playoff, and they almost did beat them. They were a missed field goal away from playing for a national title. I get it, but if you're good at football and the shit works, it works. I just don't understand that concept. So, long story short, 100%, this team is good enough to win it all. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. And I think, we spent the first, we spent 2021 and 2022 thinking like, there's just an element that's missing that Michigan is going to need eventually when they get to an Ohio State or when they get into the playoffs. And I think we've seen over the last 2 years that, at least in terms of conference play, their style works really well. And I think the element that they've added this year is what you have in a guy like Roman Wilson and more experience with JJ McCarthy. And if you get up against a Washington or some of these other teams that have a high octane offense, is that Michigan defense going to be, are they going to hold them to less than a touchdown? Probably not. You're going to have to score some points. You're going to have to try to, keep up to a certain extent offensively based on what your defense can do. But by and large, I think the Michigan brand, like the way that Klatt described it, a boa constrictor, slow, methodical, takes its time, but death eventually and inevitably. Inevitable death. That's what it feels like when you're playing Michigan. Like, it's not happening quickly. It's not flashy, but God damn it, by the end of the game, you're going to look up at the scoreboard and that's going to be an ass whooping. And I think we're going to see that at least until we get to week 10. And then it's going to be real interesting to see what that looks like in Happy Valley. But to your point, to the overall question, this brand of football as is, you've got a dynamic wide receiver and a great connection between Roman Wilson and JJ McCarthy. The running game with Blake Corum and Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards. It hasn't been electric. We haven't seen the big breakaway runs that we saw last year, but it's been good and consistent. And the offensive line is good and consistent. And the defense is one of the best in the country. As is, they can win a national championship now. I believe that, but I still believe there's room to get better, and they will get better. And so I think that's what's exciting about this football team is this brand of football. We've always trained ourselves to like, you got to be throwing it 50, 60 yards down the field. You got to be putting up 50 plus points. You've got to have highlight plays. Michigan, for the most part, doesn't have that. And so far, when you look around the country, I mean, they're arguably the number one team in the country. I know 12 people in the AP voted them number one, and that's gone up week by week. There's no doubt that as is, they can win a national championship with this brand of football.
Boa constrictor, quicksand, sumo wrestler. How are you liking these analogies, dude? These metaphors.
Love 2 years ago, I would have hated it, but I'm starting to really embrace it, man. I like the way they play. I like the way they play football.
It's funny that you mention like a Washington, and I'll throw like a USC into that discussion too. Maybe even like a Texas that does have a little bit more of the high octane offense, a little bit more of the vertical passing game. All right, let's take. I'll take USC because I think they're the best of those three. I think Caleb Williams is an absolute game changer. He's a difference maker. But let's say they're used to scoring 45 a game. Well, you play Michigan, you're probably only scoring 20 or 25. Now, can you keep Michigan from scoring 25 or more? That they can't. Those teams, they can't. They, at least from what I've watched, I mean, you're talking, final scores 51-46 and 49-42. Michigan is balanced enough to get it done on both sides at a high enough clip to where I think they're going to give all of those teams problems. All those other teams that are, battling right now and jockeying for position and potentially making a playoff run, they're just not built that way. The closest one is Georgia, but their quarterback situation's not good enough, and they don't have the high level NFL talent that they've had over the last couple of years. They're just back to earth a little bit. That's all. They're still a really good team. And I think if you put Michigan and Georgia on a neutral field right now, it would be a freaking dogfight. And I don't know who I would pick in that game, but they've come back to earth a little bit. Quarterback play is certainly down, and for Michigan, it's up. J.J. McCarthy is better now than he's ever been. Roman Wilson is better now than he's ever been. The running game's still there. The defense is better. Yes, Michigan can beat everybody in the country right now. It might look different in different games. It certainly would. Yeah, I think you'd be lying to yourself a little bit if you weren't like, I don't want to say scared, but a little like, what would it look like for Michigan to take on a Michael Penix team or a Caleb Williams? That's tricky, but I think Michigan's got the formula. I do. I don't buy into this. Well, Ohio State's built for this, but they're not built for this. Like that's dumb to me. I don't get that. All right. We've talked about it a bunch. We've talked about it today. I don't want to harp on it too much. We don't need to spend a ton of time on it. I'm going to put the word worry out there at this point, though. Is there any reason to worry that Colston Loveland and Donovan Edwards have not found the end zone yet this year? Like you said, beginning of the season, we thought that's two of their best weapons. They're going to be so involved week in and week out. And I don't know if you can say that they have been. I don't think you can make that statement.
No, and I think I said it earlier in the show. I'm actually it's puzzling, but I actually feel optimistic because I believe that they are going to make an impact as the season goes on. And even in the absence of either one of those guys finding the end zone this year, Michigan has been absolutely dominant. So I see no reason whatsoever to worry. If anything, I'm looking at it like, Jesus, Michigan's blowing teams out. They're winning convincingly. And these two guys are pretty much at the starting line yet. Like your two top ponies aren't even running yet. You got to let those boys run. And at some point they will. I just think it's going to happen. So yeah, am I worried? Absolutely not. I'm actually, I'm feeling pretty good that two of the top weapons haven't been unleashed quite yet.
Let me ask you this. Is there any worry that you could get some, how would I word it? Addition by subtraction or subtraction by addition, however you want to word that. Meaning, if Colston Loveland suddenly scores a touchdown and Donovan does, maybe that's because we know possessions are limited. We know that they're not getting as many plays because of the new time, the new clock rules and just how Michigan does it. So in other words, if Loveland's scoring and Donovan's scoring, maybe Blake is not, maybe the offense is, or does it matter? Does it not matter? Get in the end zone, whoever it is, cool. Or do you think that Blake will continue to get his and the offense will go to another level, and these other two guys who we thought would be more involved will start to get more involved?
Yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. Because Donovan Edwards had 14 carries against Nebraska.
Yeah.
Any one of those carries has the potential to break free, as the folks down in Columbus know all too well. And so I think that's what we're going to see as the season goes on. I'm not necessarily sure that he's going to get more carries to try to supplement or, overtake what Blake is doing. I just think one of those or two of those 14 carries are going to turn into more of what we're accustomed to from Donovan Edwards. Same goes with Colston Loveland. I don't think you're going to need to take away from what AJ Barner's doing. I just think Loveland, in the 5 targets that he might have, will ultimately find the end zone as the season goes on. So yeah, I don't think it's addition by subtraction. I think it's these guys have had some opportunities and it hasn't happened yet, but it hasn't affected Michigan in a negative way whatsoever. So really all that's going to happen is when they do pop off, what would have been, 34 or 40 points gets closer to 50. Like that's what I view out of this Michigan offense. You have 2 of their top contributors that haven't found the end zone yet that will inevitably get in the end zone.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. The production should go up, offensive output should go up when those guys get more involved.
Look at me, like I'm taking on that Jim Harbaugh mentality. How do I turn a negative into a positive? And to me,
Chris,
that's how you do it.
Damn it, Chris, get better, not bitter, will you?
That's what I'm doing. So every day of my life. That's the struggle, Brandon. Going to the defense here, Michigan. We've talked about it. Incredible start to the year. Points against this defense are very hard to come by. Michigan hasn't given up more than 7 points in a game all season. That's the pace that I think is they're on like a 1933 pace, like the fewest games through the first 5 weeks since 1933 or something like that. The defense is playing lights out. Here's my question. We've had it in our predictions. We've had, Michigan 34, Rutgers 10. I think we thought Nebraska was going to put up 10 or 13 points or whatever. Michigan has not given up more than a touchdown yet through 5 weeks. Does that trend change this weekend in Minnesota? Does Michigan give up more than 7 points to the Gophers?
No. I mean, I just don't think Minnesota's that good. I don't think that what they want to do is going to work against Michigan's defense. It's another. They're like Michigan light. Like they want to do a lot of what Michigan does. They want to run the ball. They want to get play action involved. They're breaking in a new quarterback for the first time in about a decade and a half. So that they're 5 games in now at this point. But no, I don't think it'll look. Dude, you can go right down the schedule. After the first 3 weeks, I'm like, it's going to look like this every week until you get to Penn State. Like every team is going to struggle to do what they want to do. And Michigan, like we just talked about, is going to squeeze the life out of them and do what they want to do. You're going to get 35 to 45 points out of Michigan and 3 to 10 out of the opponents for 8 weeks. I really think that's about what it's going to look like. So I'll say no. I think it's going to be a very similar outcome to what we just saw in Lincoln.
For the same reasons, I think Roman Wilson's going to break Desmond Howard's record is why I'm going to say no as well for Michigan giving up more than 7 points. It's because of what they've done through the first 5 weeks of the season. I know they're leading the nation in scoring defense. I think it's like 6.4 points per game or something like that. And again, a lot of those touchdowns or those scores are coming in garbage time. And so, yeah, I think we see a lot of the same, and I think the score is going to look very, very similar to what we saw in Lincoln, where Michigan's putting up 40 plus and Minnesota's at, a touchdown or less. And I think that was the important thing of what they did in Lincoln last weekend. I think you go on the road, you go on that environment. People have some questions about your running game. People have some questions about, well, you really haven't played anybody. And you go and you do something like that on the road. And even though Nebraska isn't all that great, I think that sets the tone for how they feel about what things are going to look like in Minneapolis. I think it's going to be another dominant performance.
It's 6 points even, Chris. Through 5 games, Michigan has given up 30 points total.
There you go. Yeah,
that's getting it done. That's certainly getting it done. This was actually going to be my last question, but I'm going to do it now to piggyback off of this Minnesota-specific question. Chris, I asked it to you last week. I would assume it's going to be a very low number this week, but on my 1 to 10 scale, what's your worry for another road test this time against Minnesota?
Zero.
Dude,
I have
it's like
zero concern. None.
It's like a stone cold lock that Michigan's going to win by 3 scores.
I'm going to knock on wood because I don't want to get too cocky, too confident, even though we've already established how we feel about it has zero impact on the game itself. But these guys are locked in. They've got bigger goals. They know what the ultimate prize is, and they're taking it week by week. And man, the leadership on the team, the coaching staff, the way that they are built, I have all the confidence in the world that no matter who they're up against, they're going in there to take care of business and to make a statement. And I think, again, you ask me my concern level going into Minneapolis, prime time on NBC. I think Michigan's going to be looking to make another big statement. Yeah, to make another big statement on the road and come back to Ann Arbor 6-0. So level of concern, zero, none.
I'm with you. I think the line opened pretty close to what this last one was. I think Michigan's favored again by about 18, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure somebody. It
feels very similar. I remember before the season started, we were looking at Nebraska and Minnesota as like, those are 2 tough games on the road, back to back. What are things going to look like? And now that we're 5 weeks into the season, I think we all have a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like. It's going to look like what we saw last weekend in Lincoln.
That's actually a slightly worse 19.5. So Michigan expected to beat Minnesota even worse than they did Nebraska, which, the 45-7 against Nebraska certainly probably swayed that number just a touch, but with good reason. I'm with you. Zero. I don't think there's, you talk about, it's a road game. Yeah, Michigan's better, but you play this game 100 times, Minnesota'd get a couple. I don't think they would. I don't think I think you can play this one as many times as you want to play it. It's going to be Michigan every time. I just don't know a formula that team can, because they don't do anything different or weird enough. That like that can be the equalizer when a team is outmatched. But they're trying to do what Michigan does, but they're not as good at it in any way, shape, or form. And so, in the past they had a veteran quarterback, they had some NFL receivers, they had an NFL running back. They don't have that anymore. I just don't see what they're going to be able to do that gives Michigan even a little bit of resistance. So I think it's a no-brainer. I'm with you.
And Jim Harbaugh, perfect 3-0 against Minnesota so far in his Michigan coaching career. I'm going to go away from Michigan for this last question. Okay. Because look, there is a big game happening this Saturday between there's 4 unbeaten teams left in the Big Ten. 2 of them are playing each other this weekend. You've got Maryland traveling to Columbus to take on Ohio State. I'm just going to ask you point blank. Look, we're not very high on Ohio State, and I think Maryland has been very surprising. Maryland 5-0, Ohio State 4-0 coming off of the bye week. Who suffers their first loss this weekend?
I still think Maryland loses, but I do think it gets a little interesting because they'll throw it around. They've got some speed, they've got some talent. But if this was in Maryland, I would have a lot more to think about. But going to Columbus, I'll still give the edge to Ohio State, but I don't think it's a blowout. And we've seen Maryland get blown out before. I don't think that happens this week. I think they're confident. It's probably the best they've been under Mike Locksley. Talia Tagovailoa is a good quarterback, and he's veteran now. He's been a veteran. I mean, he's played a lot of football, but he's as confident as he's ever been. They've looked pretty good. But I'll still take Ohio State at home reluctantly. I wish I thought otherwise, but that's the smart pick in my opinion.
Anybody got a game time on that? When's the kickoff time for that? I don't want to use my computer. I don't want to start freezing it up. But if somebody could give me what's the kickoff time for Maryland, Ohio State? Anybody out there got that?
Noon.
All right, so we got a noon kickoff.
By the way, how is Maryland not ranked at all?
I mean, listen,
haters.
This is part of where I'm going with this, Brandon. Probably better than anybody over the last couple years, I have been a believer in the Terps. And then going into this season, I was like, I'm off that train. I am no longer a believer. And now Maryland 5-0, looking like a solid football team, going into Columbus to face Ohio State, which is coming off of a bye week, facing a broken man, Ryan Day, who's desperately trying to convince the world he's got a tough team.
We're tough.
I'm going to say it right here. Maryland's going to go into that building and they're going to beat the Buckeyes.
Wow.
And it is going to be a glorious afternoon in Columbus. I can't wait to get on the show after it happens. I've got all the faith in the Tagovailoa. The offense is great. Maryland believes they can do it. And again, they're getting no respect nationally, not even ranked, a perfect 5-0 in one of the toughest divisions in college football. They're going to go into Columbus to make a statement, and I think they beat the Buckeyes.
Chris, I want to just
Give me
say
the Terps.
Vegas sees that game going the same way they see Michigan and Minnesota going. I just want to let you know. 19.5. Same spread.
Vegas has been known to be wrong from time to time. They're getting this one wrong.
I bet I'd be interested to see where the money is at on that one. Like where the public has their money.
I like that round. Maryland by 10. Yeah, it's going to be something like that.
Wow.
You know, Ohio State's going to get into a situation where, you know, they make it close late. They've got an opportunity. They screw it up.
I just don't.
I'm not a believer.
I just don't see that happening in Columbus. If it was in Maryland, I could get much more on board with that storyline.
Notre Dame is not that great of a team. I get Ohio State went on the road and beat them, but I am not a believer in Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State's a tough team. They can print T-shirts and Ryan Day can scream it at every single press conference. I'm not buying it. I think they're soft as shit. And I think as soon as Maryland goes in there and puts a few points up on the board and the crowd gets a little uneasy about it, I think things are going to shift the other way. Look, give Maryland credit. Ohio State's coming off of a bye week. I think they're going to be a little bit rusty, and I think Maryland's going to be looking to make a point.
We're probably going to play this sound clip back just like we did the Urban Meyer sound clip this past week.
Ohio State 30-point blowout.
Ohio State probably wins like 63-10 or some shit. Anyway,
give me the Terps.
I'm with you.
Give me the over.
I do think it's going to be a closer game. I would take Maryland in the 19.5, but I still think Ohio State's going to win. But
we will play this back. Save this soundbite. Maryland by 10.
1 hour and 20 minutes in. Chris going on a rant.
That's a tough team.
We're tough.
Like to know where Lou Holtz is at right now.
He sounded like Jerry Seinfeld. Sounded like Jerry Seinfeld right now, sleeping. There's no doubt. It's 8:30 p.m., dude.
In a recliner.
He's in bed. No,
I don't know if he's in bed.
No.
Recliner.
No, this man is in full body button-up pajamas in bed.
He's got like the nightcap on with like the candle on the little tray there next to the okay.
Yeah, his sleep hat with a ball is hanging next to his face. Glass of warm milk half gone. He's done, dude. He's out.
Just out.
Teeth in a jar next to the milk. He's out, bro. Yeah. All right. Last but not this. You're done, right? That was your last one.
It. That was the last one.
My last one is what we've been talking about, kind of leading up to this point, Chris. And I don't know if there's an answer, so I'm actually curious to hear what you say. Michigan, is going to face some different kinds of teams, but not as different as what they might end up seeing if they make it to the playoff against, say, a USC or a Texas or a Washington. Chris, what will give this Michigan team fits? What out there in the football world will be trouble for this Michigan team?
I think it's a team like Texas, a team like Washington. I do think it's a team that, has an explosive offense that can test Michigan, put their backs against the wall early, and then force this offense, quite frankly, to be in a position that it hasn't been all season, where you want to get some points on the drive, but now you got to have them. You got to get the ball down the field. And that's where I think Michigan's going to be tested the most. I do think, and you made a good point earlier in the show, yeah, if USC can go out and score, 40-some points against Colorado, can they do that against Michigan? No, I think they can score, 24, 27 points against Michigan, and I think Michigan can score 30 or 40 against the USC defense. And so that's the caveat, is that for whatever they might struggle with, what they're going to see offensively, I don't think those teams have the defense to keep Michigan from doing what they want to do offensively. And so I think ultimately it all equals Michigan winning. But yeah, Oregon, Texas, I was going to say to a certain extent Florida State. You still got to give Georgia their flowers because they're number one until somebody proves otherwise. But yeah, man, it's I don't know. Like Washington makes me a little nervous. Mm-hmm. Texas makes me a little nervous. Georgia, maybe it's just because of who they've been. still make me a little nervous. But every single one of those teams I just listed, I think Michigan beats. And we weren't saying that 2 or 3 weeks ago. I remember specifically we were talking Florida State. Right. We were talking Texas, like neutral field, who wins. And you and I were both taking whoever the other team was. And now we're going into week 6 and it's confidently Michigan. So again, just interesting how quickly those things can change.
Yeah, I mean, it was while we were watching Michigan beat Bowling Green 30-7.
Yeah.
You know, and then you've got LSU and Texas battling each other or whatever the matchup. Well, no, it was who was it that Texas Alabama? It was Texas Alabama that played against each other, wasn't it?
Florida State, LSU.
Florida State LSU.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just looked different when you've got two teams of that caliber playing against each other than it did when Michigan was playing who they were playing. But I'm with you. Now, after watching what they just did against Nebraska, no, Nebraska's not the class of the Big Ten, but it's still a Big Ten team on the road. Jim Harbaugh, again, he said it. That's the biggest, most physical team we've played, and they manhandled them. They did whatever they wanted on both sides of the ball, up and down the field.
Listen, Brandon, we saw it when we were in Nebraska, and we saw it when we were at the world's largest truck stop in Iowa. The people out there are built differently.
Corn-fed.
Even the children look like they're, 6'2", 235. I mean, you're talking about 8-year-olds. Like we saw them walking in to the establishment there. They all looked. I mean, it must just be the fresh air and the fresh food, but there's something going on out there.
6'2", a big human being. 35, and the women covered in Aquanet. I mean, dude,
careful now.
No.
Easy, Brandon.
The hairdos. I thought. I mean, look.
It was all strong. It was all very strong. I
feel like I can speak on this as someone who had a mother who rocked this a little bit too long. But the teased hairsprayed dome. I haven't seen one in a long time. Saw multiple at the largest truck stop in the world. Multiple.
Well, if you're gonna see them, that's where you're gonna see them.
That's where you'd see them. A lot of bedazzled. A lot of things bedazzled when they walked in, covered in
a whole lot of gems.
I mean,
a lot of gems. People from Nebraska, people that play football in Nebraska, people that play football in Iowa, you grow up in those states, you're around that environment. Yeah, I can imagine that was a big team that Michigan faced. I mean,
it's probably so they can be located in the corn. You get lost out there, the bedazzled.
Lost. You just eat your way out.
No, it's.
I thought you were talking about the size.
No, the bedazzled. It's shimmering in the moonlight. You can find them. There may be some fumes coming off of the hairspray. I mean, it could be a survival tactic. I don't know what it's for, but I saw it and it was weird. That's all I know. Like a whole flock of Iowa fans came running in that place.
Because as we were driving back from Nebraska, the Michigan State, shout out to the Spartans, by the way. What a sad looking semi truck that was on the way home. We couldn't even tell if that was
was not aware that my mom was in here tonight.
Easy. We did pass the Michigan State football equipment semi truck on the way home after they had lost to Iowa. And what a sad looking semi truck that was. We weren't even sure if that was the actual equipment truck or if that was like somebody's homemade version of an equipment truck because it just looked so bad. But yeah, and then what we passed? Yep, there it is. Relentlessly losing. But you know what we passed further down the road and much, much further ahead? The Michigan equipment truck. Beautiful, beautiful rig going down the road. And Brandon, after spending 22 hours on the road with you this weekend, I feel like I got some pretty good insight into what it's like to be a truck driver. And I got to be honest, I'm not interested.
You don't want anything to do with that.
Nothing to do with that. That is a lifestyle.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Trucking isn't a profession. It's a lifestyle.
It really is. Chris, you actually, if you Google like trucker body, it's like a thing. They turn into like.
Dude, you sit for that. I feel like I got a little trucker body going on right now.
It was a long weekend, but hey, we made it through. We made it through this show. Hour and a half tonight on a Monday, Chris.
Yeah, we really did well on the the burning questions segment. We're like, can we keep it under 30 minutes? No, we actually went an hour on it.
How about 45 minutes on burning questions? All right.
It is what it is.
Go upstairs and eat some food, watch some Monday Night Football, and talk to you people again on Wednesday. Chris, as always, brother, we saw a lot of each other this weekend. I wasn't sure the show was going to happen. We just, we needed a break. Windows were coming down and back up for various reasons. It's a lot.
Another reason you were almost TFG. I left that one out, Brandon.
For a damn minute. Okay.
All right. You want to go down this rabbit hole? Let's do it. I'm happy.
We were in the vehicle for 22 plus hours. And one Chris Breiler has the nerve to say that he didn't break wind one time.
I didn't. I swore on my children.
This is an egregious statement.
It might be, but it's the truth. The reason that happened was because Brandon on the other side, within inches of me, is breaking wind left and right, and not putting the window down because he's waiting. Well, you did once, but then you stopped because I pointed it out because I was like, okay, stop shitting your pants over there, and I thought that would be the end of it. But your solution to it was keep the window up, let him go silently, and then wait and see if I notice. And me over here,
which you didn't.
That makes it even worse. That makes it even worse because within that confined space, Brandon, at least 10% of that air quality was Brandon Brown.
Well,
and I'm breathing that in.
And quite a quality it is, sir.
I did, Raymond. I waited until I got to the world's largest truck stop to do what I needed to do. Brandon, on the other hand, it was a free for all the entire ride.
Well, then he's crop dusting women and children. I mean, I don't know.
No. I was in the restroom.
Now you were.
I told you, the runs has got to me. You don't got to believe it, Brandon, but that's the truth. That's the truth.
Air biscuits, let them free. Let them free, Chris.
Egregious. Between that, the Nickelback, the karaoke, thriving during a global pandemic, I almost said Nazi outbreak. Not a Nazi outbreak, a zombie outbreak.
Nazis in Iowa?
Listen, bro, I would thrive if there was a Nazi outbreak. Well, might do well there too, Brandon.
I would thrive in a zombie apocalypse. We've been over it. I'm making a list. I'm checking it twice. All right, we'll see you guys on Wednesday. I'm out of here.